You run your own company. How do you manage that?
There is no one who will be able to multitask like a mother, I'm telling you that. You tell me to get something done, I'll get it done. So I ended up working in the dating industry, and we built what became Bumble.
Did you take any maternity leave at that point?
I went back after 4 months.
I can't even imagine what it could mean to go back into a workplace and turn it on.
I used to be a real hard ass.
Did you decide to end breastfeeding when you went back to work?
I did. It wasn't even an option at that time. You're the only senior woman, and now you're the only senior woman with a child. If they look at anyone and they think that they have it all and they're doing it all, they're doing it all with...
How do you navigate that? Michelle Kennedy, thank you so much for joining me on CEO Mum. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Well, thanks for having me.
I think we're just going to kick off with a little whistle-stop tour of your career in 60 seconds, just like where you're at.
So I started life weirdly as a corporate lawyer. So that was my starting point. I used to do M&A, and by a weird twist of events, I ended up working in the dating industry and building dating apps, and became co-CEO of a platform called Badoo, which was a big European dating platform, and part of my time there, we built what became Bumble. So I was really at that kind of start of thinking about women first products, and also dating as a new frontier. Dating wasn't like that when I first joined, it was web-based. And I became a new mum, had my son, and carried on with the day job, and then eventually decided that I wanted to build something that was focused on motherhood and helping women. And so I launched Peanut in 2017, which is a social network to connect women across different life stages. And I now have 2 children, Nuala and Finn, and Nuala is nearly 5 and Finn is 10.
There are some opinions around mothers not being really committed to their work, and that they're sleep deprived and they don't have the energy, or they're not prioritizing the business's KPIs, whatever it is. You run your own company. How do you manage that?
There is no one who will be able to multitask like a mother, I'm telling you that. The stamina that we had to have in those early days, and we still have to have now, you tell me to get something done, I'll get it done. It will be delivered. And so it is an absolute strength and power to have that mindset and be able to do that. There is nothing about us being less committed, absolutely not.
So Nuala was born when the company was 2 years old. Finley was how old when you started the company?
2.5.
2.5. So you in the middle of both of them was this new baby. Peanut, right?
Exactly.
What gave you the motivation to start a company when, a lot of women at the point, and I know he was 2 and they're very different at 2 to they are when they're newborn, but a lot of women are probably just finding themselves again and getting used to having a full night's sleep again for once. You decided to take on this massive juggernaut of the greatest social media app for women connecting with other women. Why and how did you find that motivation?
It is about those shifts, and it's almost like you've made it. I got through that bit. I got through all of that bit, and now maybe there's space or room in me to do the thing that I've been talking about. But I do think it is that ebb and flow of okay, I got to the peak, and now maybe I could relax and start thinking about something that I wanted to do. Yeah. It's very hard to make that decision to say, okay, I'm going to leave my very lovely secure job and go and build something. And I kind of lived with it and sat with that idea for quite a while before I was brave enough to say, no, I'm actually going to do this. What I didn't know, naively, is how hard Peanut would be and how all-consuming it would be. I think it was harder than having Finn. And that was hard for me. That was the biggest thing that was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But yeah, Peanut it still is.
Did you take any maternity leave at that point? And that's when you sort of started to ideate this new chapter?
I had a very short maternity leave, which isn't ideal, by the way, and I wouldn't advocate for it at all. But I was kind of in a position where I had reached a point in my career where I was really kind of pushing. I loved it, and I was really engaged and involved when I had Finn. And the plan was to take a real maternity, not long, but a proper maternity. But I went back after 4 months, so it was very short, and I had been working during that 4 months. And my mum moved in, looked after Finn, and I went back to work. And I'd have 1 day at home and 4 days in the office. There was no hybrid working. That didn't really exist. We weren't remote working at that point. So it was a lot. But there was something about returning to work, because I had really found it hard and lonely and isolating, that made me feel better. and kind of more connected with the old me. And I think made me a better mum and made my relationship with Finley better because I didn't fear him anymore, because I was kind of just a bit more connected to who I was. And I'm not saying that was the right move. And there were many things that weren't right about what I did. But I didn't know anything else at that point, I think.
I like to talk about stamina, because I think becoming a mother really requires a lot of mental and physical stamina. And
so much.
Even if you're just doing motherhood, but doing that with returning back to work after 4 months, how did you find that stamina?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting when you think about stamina, because you know that people talk about, sleepless nights. Yeah. And you know that people talk about a birth, but nothing prepares you for it. You don't really know what it means. And what it means is constantly being exhausted, constantly having no full night's sleep, constantly running on empty, and constantly being obsessed with someone other than yourself. And that sounds like, that sounds joyous, but you've spent your whole life only really thinking about you, and of course thinking about other people, but you as the primary. You wake up, you brush your teeth, right? You don't say to your partner, or go and brush your teeth. You do you. And as soon as that little person comes, you don't think about, I better brush my teeth, or you're like, I need to pick them up, cuddle them, feed them, care for them. And that is unrelenting. And so stamina comes in every part. You're drawing on reserves you didn't even know you had. Add into it going back to work, a boss who was not a parent, and actually a workforce that had no parents in it. And trying to act like I didn't have children.
How do you navigate that? Because I can't even imagine what it could mean to go back into a workplace, not having slept that night, and turn it on and not pretend.
Yeah, it was really hard. I actually don't know how I did it now I think about it, because I mean, I feel huge regret for some of the things that I did. When I first went back to work, first of all, you're going back full time and you're in the office all day and no one else around you has children.
And was that because you couldn't go part-time, or because you didn't choose? Okay.
It was not an option for me. And so you go in and you're in full time and no one around you has children, and you're the only senior woman in the organisation anyway, and now you're the only senior woman with a child, and you've gone in and people are used to having a call with you at 6 p.m. and so you start to say yes, but I know that 6 p.m. is bath time. And I know I want to see my boy because I haven't been with him all day, and I'm desperate to get home and see him and do bath time. And it took me, longer than it should have done to think, no, hang on, this is not right. I don't want to do this. You can call me all night if you need to. I'll be awake, let's face it. But between the hours
6 and 8,
I'm out.
No.
That's it. Call me after, all good. All day, all good. But do not call me then, because I need to be with him and I want to do bath time and I want to do bedtime. And also, it's my responsibility to make sure that I make that stand. Every other woman in the organisation otherwise looks at me and thinks, that's how you have to mother and work here. And that's not right. So I definitely got a lot of things wrong before I got them right. And, all the stuff that happens to your body while you're doing that. You're extremely hormonal when you've just had a baby. My boobs are still leaking. There's so much stuff that's going on.
Did you decide to end breastfeeding when you went back to work?
I did.
And was that something that you had considered maybe continue doing, or was you very finite on that decision?
So interesting. It wasn't even an option at that time, I really feel. I think we're much more progressive now than we were. You have to think, even that we have this conversation, you're doing this podcast, that wasn't happening. This was 2014. We weren't having conversations like this. There was no pumping room in the office. It didn't exist. So it wasn't really an opportunity for me to say, okay, and I'll carry on pumping, and can I have a room at work and put my milk in the fridge? I mean, obviously not.
Can I leave every hour and a half?
Do you mind while I just, no way. I wore the tight bras and I, put the padding in, and that was it. And I stopped before I went back. And it just wasn't an option. With Nuala, I was already running Peanut. It was totally different. I was pumping in the office. I had one of those portable ones. I was doing all of the things. Amazing. Because I could. Yeah. But no, with Finn, that wasn't the world. It didn't exist.
I really want to continue down that path, but I just want to go back for 1 second and talk about this idea of the decision to return to work? Because there's going to be a lot of women that feel that they don't have a choice and they have to return to work for many different reasons. Was there any other thoughts that were going through your mind logistically about how you was going to juggle, whether that was fears or whether that was any anticipation of any logistical things? So, and how did you manage that? So I heard you say that you brought your mum in to stay with you.
Yeah.
Did you have any extra help or support? And was you worried at all about any of those new dynamics that were going to be formed?
It's really strange because at the time, I don't think I'd really thought about it. Honestly, I was having Finn. I was going to have this baby. My mum doesn't live in London. Like, I don't have any family here. And I was like, I mean, we'll just work it out. He'll go to nursery. I went to look at nurseries. I thought that's kind of what would happen when he was kind of 11 months. And obviously for a variety of reasons, including my job needed me back, and I called mum and she moved in with us, and it changes everything. When you have your mum living with you, she would live with us Monday to Thursday. She'd leave Thursday night, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it would be the three of us.
That's like us, yeah.
And she'd return on Monday morning. And, driving down the A1 in her little Mini every week, it was incredible because if it wasn't going to be me, at least it was my mum. And it was very difficult. It's difficult on your relationship. All of a sudden your mum's living with your husband. Not something that I thought I'd see, but, we did it. And it's also difficult on her because I would come home every day. I couldn't wait to see him. She couldn't wait to show me his latest trick. I'd be annoyed that she got the trick before I got the trick. And on it goes. And you have that constant feeling of, I missed it. I missed it. I was working and I missed it. But overall, if I look back at it now, maybe I went back a little sooner than I would like. But I do believe that I became a better mum as a result because I started to become more confident about myself again. I knew who I was at work. I felt connected to myself at work, so I could go and connect with that Michelle and bring her home. Not being connected to that Michelle for a period of months when your girlfriends are in the office every day. You can't hang out with them. I didn't have any friends to hang out with. It was very isolating, and that has an impact on your relationship with your child and as a mother. So it was really nice, I think, to have that moment of I feel more strongly connected to him.
I find that identity shift something that I can imagine a lot of women, myself included, definitely experience, especially with, and I've only got the twins, but I think for the first babies, that's when your whole world is rocked and the dynamic needs to, the whole setup of your life needs to change. Did you ever consider other help, or did you ever get any other help in?
So at the time that I had Finn, the answer is no. I didn't have any other help. It was me and my husband and my mum.
And you knew it was going to be your mum from the start.
And that was it. And that's what we had. And I had, a mortgage, and that's you just make it work. Imagine then when I wanted to do Peanut, and it was like, now I have to give up my lovely salary and all of the comfort that comes with it. Plus, by that point, my mum was tired.
Yeah, second one round now.
It was
it's not a novelty anymore.
It was 2.5 years, and she was like, I don't want to do this anymore, which was fair.
Yeah.
So at that point, Finn was starting nursery anyway. He was going to start going but not for the full day. And you still get school holidays. Like, what was I going to do? So at that point, I was fortunate enough that we did get a nanny. And I'm always really super honest about childcare and that it takes a village. I'm very privileged. I was able to do it. And I wasn't able to do it immediately. I had a lot of saving and a lot of war chests to create, but I did it. And I don't like when people aren't honest about the support that they have, because it just makes everyone else feel like they're failing.
100%. And this is one of the reasons why I actually wanted to start the podcast, because there's a lot of young girls that will look at the Kardashians, not to demonize them specifically, but look at Kylie Jenner with 2 children and think, I can look glamorous, run a company, be a billionaire, be on all these covers, look great in these editorials, and still be a mother. It's just almost impossible, and you're not doing that alone. So
you're not doing it alone. I have so much help. In fact, it was a very real moment when I was kind of partway through Peanut, and in the exact same way I resource my team at work, I have to resource my life, because I can't do both. And you have to look at it like that if you're in a position to do it. or you have to make choices accordingly. And I can't make that other hire at work. Similarly, in my personal life, I also can't do whatever it might be. You know, something that I might want to do if I can't like find the resource to support. It's hard when you're working and a mummy, obviously, to then think, and now I need time for me, because ultimately you take the time as you're working as time for you, because that's when you're not with your children. But I want that too. I want to work and be mum and be Michelle.
What other sort of support did you have? Did you have like cleaners? Did you have a PA? Like, what was your setup in a more technical way?
Really great question. So when I was at Badoo, I had all of the infrastructure you can imagine. I had finance, I had legal, I had an EA, she was incredible. I had everything you can imagine, because you're running a big business, and you know, had a turnover of over 100 million at that point, and it was a very, very fast growing company. All of the infrastructure. You leave that, you start your own company, humbling. I am legal, HR, BI, EA, I'm everything, all in one. And it's so interesting how quickly you just turn. I just became it. It's fine. I almost forgot that was the life that I had. And it was 2020. It was just before COVID, or the lockdown for COVID. And I closed our Series A fundraising. And the investor that I had brought on board said to me, I think you're going to need an EA. And I had starved myself of anything of that nature. I was so tight with where we spent the company money. I wouldn't spend it on anything, you know, I would go to Primark and buy the t-shirts and get them printed. Like, I was so concerned about getting the deal.
And it was you and one other employee for a long time.
Very, like, Hannah and I, and we were doing these, like, we would keep it super tight. And so I was very conscious of that. So the thought of having an EA, I mean, it was like, but if your investor says, well, that felt like permission. And I went back to my old EA from Badoo, and I was like, do you want to go again? And it was life-changing. She changed, like, you know, all of the admin things that are in your life, all of a sudden someone's doing your life admin for you and looking after you, because I'm looking after everything else. But I did need that permission to even think about doing it. And again, a great privilege, but highlights the importance of, as you pointed out, understanding where people seem so successful and you feel like you're not hitting that success. It's because they're able to dedicate their time in a way that you can't even imagine, because you're doing everything. And as soon as you're not doing everything, you get to choose. The power of choice is enormous, and people don't really show up and be honest about that. But I really believe it's incumbent on all women. Like, if you don't have choice, that's not on you, and it doesn't mean you're doing a bad job. You're doing an even better job.
Especially in survival mode, when you have the mental load of doing all, like you say, the life min, the house min, we forget that these are labours. Like, these are people's occupations: cleaners, chefs, housekeepers. You're taking on many different roles. When people say a stay-at-home mum, what does she do? Well, probably 5 different people's jobs, and let's not overlook that.
And with absolutely zero ability to ever stop and prioritise herself. It's that thing, what do you do first thing in the morning? You brush your own teeth. It's your life in many ways is not really about you, because you're working so many different things. It is the biggest misconception that anyone could ever have, that if they look at anyone and they think that they have it all and they're doing it all, they're doing it all with a whole heap of people around them that gives them the freedom of choice.
I want to go into your house and home, and talk about how you, as a working woman, your partner, was he a stay-at-home dad? Was he also working full-time? What was the dynamics there with you guys?
So he works full-time. He is a very, very good hands-on dad. He's older than me and has big children. So this is not his first go at this, so to speak, and he's super, super involved, and I'm very, very fortunate from that perspective. And as are the children. you know, I don't know, for me growing up, I never saw my dad. You know, he was an electrician, so he was up at 4 and on site, and, you know, I didn't really see him. My mum did everything. And yeah, he's very involved and very around, and I am very, very fortunate. It's very equal in our house on that front.
Okay, interesting. Because I'm always interested to know how people delegate the tasks in the household when you are a working woman and you're a mother, because of gender stereotypes. A lot of the burden does fall on the women, whether it's because you're breastfeeding or because you are, you know, you're having to rest because you've just had a major surgery from a C-section, whatever it is. How did you approach delegating tasks, or was that something that just happened?
So interesting. It mostly just happened. You fall into different roles that you're each better at or more comfortable with. I am like the educator, for example, in our house. I will sit down, I'll colour, I'll do arts and crafts. I love it. I'll do any of that all day long. Doesn't bother me. You've got maths homework. I can't help you with it, but I'll sit with you. I'm there and I'm in it. And Rich, for example, is the taxi. You need to go anywhere, get anywhere, he's there. He'll drive you.
As the chauffeur.
That's it. He'll drive you anywhere around. You know, I spent most of my like early relationship with him, and he'd be on the phone like driving big kids everywhere. Like that's him, and that's his like love language is like, let me do that for you. It doesn't mean that you don't get resentful. There are so many things like invisible labor. We joke about invisible labor in our house because I'm like, invisible labor, and he's like, yeah, do you mean like the fact that I just did the car insurance, the this, that? Right, there is still that kind of element, and I think that's normal. I mean, it would be really hard for us to have a relationship where it wasn't really equal. He has a busy job, I'm running a company, like it just was unspoken. It would always have been that way.
Oh, that's really good, because there are some relationships that aren't like that, and I think that can also impact the amount of freedom that a woman does have to explore some of the ventures that she wants to go and undertake or lean into. And that's where the kind of conversation does need to shift around. I call it domestic labour, and somebody said that makes it more masculine rather than doing the chores. But I like to highlight it as a role, because chores does feel very naggy. So if we talk about domestic labour, how much of that labour am I doing with my time versus what you're doing with your time? And having those conversations around that is extremely important.
It is. And you know what's also, I mean, and I highlight it because I didn't have it at the time that it might happen for other women, but I have lived it in a different moment, is financial independence. I've worked since I was 15 years old. I've always had my own money. I've always made my own money. That's life and how it's always been, including when I was on, you know, maternity. It was a short maternity. I, you know, was paid for the first part. I had enough I never needed to even question it. I've always had my own bank account. Like, it's just how we run our lives, and that's always worked. When I started Peanut, I had to have a conversation where I was like, look, I have a war chest, but I need to use that war chest to pay people to work with me, and I'm not going to have an income. I didn't have an income for over 2.5 years, until I closed our Series A. That's the first time I took a salary from Peanut, and that was very challenging. I had never not been financially independent, and I could see my little war chest going down and down because I was paying other people, and I was still on the board of a couple of companies, so I had some income. But when that stopped, because I was running Peanut full time, that was very hard. To say to Rich, I need some money, the words were choking in my mouth. I hated it. I hated the feeling of it. And I think that is an experience that many women go through, because they become primary carer, because they stop working, and it is totally normal for that to feel choking. It's a really, really difficult transition. And I don't have any advice on what the right way to do it is, apart from I just sat down and said to Rich, I never want to ask you for money again, because I can't have this conversation. So let's just work something out where there is an account and I'm using it. And believe me, I'm building this business for all of us. It's not just for me. And we never spoke about it again.
I can just feel the like feeling I would feel, because when you have been so used to having your own income and being financially independent and not needing to ask somebody permission to, or somebody that might question your purchasing decisions, it's just like,
it's awful. It's awful. I'd never had it in my entire life. And all of a sudden, you know, I've got a 2.5-year-old in a business, and please, could I have some money to... No.
A thought that I read recently that really stuck with me around taking time out to look after the children is that no one's paying my pension. So if I'm stopped working, I don't have a pension at the end of this. I mean, I pay my pension because I run my own company, but if I stop working, that all stops. So what is my future? How am I investing in my future whilst I'm taking this time out, which is obviously a beautiful thing to raise your children. And I don't know why I feel like I have to caveat that, but it is also taking you away from that financial freedom when you are older.
Absolutely. The pension gap is a real thing.
Who takes the day off when one of the kids is sick?
Great question. I'm going to answer this differently to I ever would have done. But now, working from home and working remotely and that hybrid model has totally transformed things. Pre that, who would have stayed at home if Finn was sick? I would have stayed at home. Now, everyone works from home. Actually, I'll be there, Rich might be there. If I had to come and do something like this or go to a meeting, it would just be a shared thing. But that's also because he now can work at home in a way that he couldn't before. So I do think that remote working has totally transformed my answer to that.
Yeah, they talk a lot about work-life balance. So when you clock off at 6, then you go home, you spend time with your family. But actually what I seem to have adopted more of from listening to lots of people is a work-life blend. And so you pick up your kid at 2 p.m. because they're sick, you bring them home, you're with them till 4, whatever. And then you get back to work for a couple of hours before bath time. You do bath time. You're probably then going to work a little bit after that as well before you go to bed, maybe, if there's a deadline. And that is also as productive as maybe sitting in that office and blanking out because you're so tired for a couple of hours or stressed doing the logistics of getting someone to pick up your child. So
I never believed it. Truly, I never believed it until I built it. And I can tell you, it means that I get the best talent, I get the right people, and we're all happy. Because we can go and take our kid or pick up something or get a delivery or whatever. No change.
What is one of the biggest misconceptions about being a business leader and a mother?
That I have all the answers, that I've got it all figured out. No, crying most nights if I get something wrong. Of course, Finn goes into school and I didn't get him the outfit for whatever that he was meant to have, or I missed stay and play at Nula or whatever it is. Yep, getting it wrong constantly, feeling horrible about it, vowing to myself I'm going to make it right, trying to get the priorities right. So no, I don't have it all figured out, ever. Just trying to muddle through as best I can.
You talk about fundraising while pregnant. Did you experience any prejudice or misconception then?
That was very hard. I have to say all of this stuff in caveat because, again, people might think, oh, there's loads of people who fundraise now pregnant. There are. We're in 2024. This is 2018 into 2019. That wasn't happening. This was not a thing. It was absolutely taboo to even really be talking about, you know, pregnancy or any of those things. It was hard enough that I was building a product which most investors that I was speaking to couldn't even use, let alone the fact that then I was walking in with a pregnant belly, and I was a sole founder, right? I wasn't walking in with oh well, don't worry if I'm off, you know, that hit. That wasn't how that was going. So yes, it was hard. I am ashamed to say that I mostly tried to hide it. Obviously later it got harder, that was. But I was on one meeting in particular, it was the done deal. One of my girlfriends was coming out of the lift. She also had a business and she must have been going to pitch the same investor. And as she walked out, she went, oh my God, you don't even look pregnant in that outfit. And I went, and she went, which is the point? Hi. And the investor was standing and it was such a horrible moment. And I was like, and I looked at him and he was like, congratulations. I was like, thank you.
Did that affect the
No,
pitch?
he did the deal.
I think also there's a lot more female investors now that understand. And so you have a bigger, I'm not to say that the investment pool is as large as male investors or even as much money, but at least we have that.
I just think things are changing. Conversations have changed. Attitudes have changed. We have funds which are focused on investing in women. Didn't exist when I started Peanut.
Has motherhood benefited the way that you work?
I used to be a real hard ass and I was a workhorse. So I just didn't take any nonsense or what I perceived to be nonsense, and no one was going to outwork me. I was going to work hard, and if you weren't working hard, shame on you, I'm going to do it. And I just had no tolerance at all. I didn't really care about people's lives. If you were, but I'm doing that, I don't care. Like, that's your problem. And motherhood totally changed all of that. And I became much more understanding, softer, and not softer in a bad way, just receptive to understanding the humanity behind the people that you work with rather than the product.
Soft doesn't also mean that you're a walkover.
Right. I just became more open to learning about a new version and a new way of doing it. And I haven't always got that balance right, actually. Sometimes I think I've gone the other way. But I am a very emotional person. I actually find myself much more emotional as I get older, which is really interesting. And I will let my team know. So if I'm moved by something, I cry. If I'm furious about something, I shout. And I'm just a little bit less controlled about the emotion. I think it's more real. It's not intentional. I actually can't control it. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing from motherhood.
I think it has to be a part of the natural process, because I can only speak for myself, but since having to learn these kids and understand them through just body language, there must be something that goes on in your brain to heighten that empathy. And therefore you feel things in a different way to maybe how you would interpret it, maybe with the more logical brain before. And I definitely feel that now, where even when I see another parent with a kid, instead of maybe rolling my eyes and they're screaming, I just want to smile at them and be like, oh, it's okay.
Been there.
Oh, poor you. Like having empathy for them.
Empathy. It's so interesting. But certainly, had you have told me 15 years ago, and there'll be a time where you'll cry in front of your team, I'd be like, what? You know, and those things kind of horrified me. And now, I just can't even control it. It just is.
Have you ever experienced burnout?
Maybe that's the crying. I definitely, yes, definitely.
What advice would you give during those times?
I think you have to stop the minute it happens. The longer you let it go, the harder it is to get rid of. Like it takes much longer. So I do think that there is an element of like accepting, okay, I hit the limit. I need to stop. I need to pause. And if you are at work and you have a team that you can tell, they'll have you. They'll catch you. My team caught me. They didn't say, no, Michelle. They were like, whatever you need, we're here. So you will have built a unit around you, friends, family, whoever it is. But it is important that you stop.
If you knew you could have everything you ever wanted in the next 5 years, what would you do, or would you do anything at all differently now?
No, nothing. Can't change it. Just am who I am. And it's that thing, keep showing up, keep doing it. Can't change it. I've had something at work recently, and I said to someone on a call yesterday, I wish I'd made this decision sooner. And she said, yeah, but you couldn't have. And I couldn't have. So no, if I get everything I want in the next 5 years, God willing, amazing. And if I don't, I have everything I want right now, because I've got gorgeous kids and a beautiful life, and just got to keep showing up. So no, I can't change anything.
That's beautiful. And what I loved about this question is it really does make you think, are you making the right... I think it's more of a thought question.
It is.
Than actually having an answer, because it makes you think from a cup that's full rather than maybe a deficit.
Yes.
Because you're like, every decision I make from now on, if I knew I'm going to have it, maybe I won't be fearful of losing that opportunity or lacking in some way or not being good enough, because I know I've already got it in 5 years. So yeah, I liked it.
And a friend said to me the other day, actually, something, this whole thing that's been evolving at work, and I said, I don't think it's gonna work. And she said to me, then you should view that as not something lost, but that you've escaped something, actually. And I was like, I like that even more.
Yeah, and what's for you
won't go past you.
Exactly. Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for all your gems, and thank you again for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed that episode or found it interesting, inspiring, or it connected with you in any way, please share it with a friend that you think would love it too. For more information about our guest or anything else that you've listened to today, be sure to check out the show notes below. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye.